Christians have always been interested in reaching Muslims with the gospel. And perhaps more than ever, because of world events, Christians have an increased interest in Islam. And so the question is, what is the best way to engage a Muslim with the goal having them understand and accept the gospel message? I'm joined by Abdu Murray to help answer that question. Abdu, you are the president and co-founder of a ministry called Embrace the Truth International Ministries, where the goal of the ministry is to reach non-believers with the truth of the gospel. You also are an adjunct speaker for Ravi Zacharias International Ministries. You grew up as a Muslim, you converted later in life to the Christian faith. And so my question in this episode is, what about Islam that caused you doubts? Why did you conclude that Islam couldn't be true?
Well, it's interesting that my approach and my story is maybe different than most, but I think it's actually pretty common in this sense. It wasn't so much my doubts about Islam that got me to become a Christian. It was my affirmations of the truths of the gospel, the beauty, the objective truths, that got me to become a Christian. I don't shout down one worldview and expect someone to become a Christian. They just become either maybe an atheist if that happens. My approach is to hold up the light of the gospel and say, don't become a Christian because your worldview is false. Become a Christian because the gospel is true. And that's where that's what happened with me, and that's what I try to emphasize as a truly apologetic way to get people to see that the gospel is true. So it wasn't as much doubts about Islam. Now, there were some things that were concerning to me. For example, I grew up believing that the Quran had never been changed and all these things, that it was, as Muhammad spoke it was written down almost immediately and it was preserved ever since. And there are great reasons now, as we uncover more and more evidence, to believe that maybe the Quran had gone through some revisions over the course of history. And a lot of Muslim scholars are actually acknowledging that history about what happened with the Quran itself. But one of those interesting fact was the denial in the Quran of Jesus' crucifixion. In the 4th chapter, 156 to 157, those verses basically say that, look, they boasted that they killed, meaning the Jews, that they killed Jesus, the so-called Messiah and the Son of God and these kind of things. But it says, of a surety, they did not kill him. It says, مَا قَتَلُوهُ وَمَا صَلَّبُهُ لَكِنْ شُبِّهَ لَهُم. They did not kill him nor crucify him, but it appeared to them as if it was so. So it denies his crucifixion and death, but history shows that it actually did happen. So there's a tension already that's there. And of course, the Islamic teaching, not the Quran teaching, but the Islamic teaching that the Bible was falsified or corrupted over time, that wasn't true either. But you notice something. Those weren't doubts about the negative case against Islam. What ended up showing me why the gospel is true is not that Islam was false, but that the things that it was claiming weren't true about Christianity actually were true. So it was a positive case for Christianity that got me to see that and that alone is the one and true valid worldview from a religious perspective.
This is really a very important point, that as we've talked off camera, that I've come to recognize maybe in a new way, because I very much agree with the strategy that you're suggesting here. But this is actually applicable to almost every area of Christian apologetics. It's applicable to apologetics with different cults, Jehovah's Witnesses and Mormons. Instead of spending our effort showing why those particular religious systems are false, maybe we should be spending more effort showing why Christianity is true. When it comes to scientific apologetics, instead of spending time, for example, arguing why evolution is false, maybe we ought to spend time arguing why the evidence for a creator is screaming at us from the record of nature. That is, we make a positive case for our view, not a negative one. Could you just elaborate a little bit more? Because again, I think this is really a very important point.
Well, absolutely. And this is one of the reasons why I love what RTB does, is that it presents a positive case and a model that can be looked at, scrutinized, evaluated as a positive way to look at things. Not positive in the sense of emotionally positive, but these are good, we're affirming something to be true. Let's examine it. The reason why this is important is because I'm not interested in making atheists out of Muslims. I'm not interested in making cynics out of people and showing, oh, your worldview is false. I'm interested in saying this is why the gospel is true. Now, by implication, you're going to say some things might be wrong or false. That's going to happen. But people don't react well to your worldview is false. They don't do that. Either they abandon their worldview for nothing, or the discussion shuts right down. There's an Indian phrase that I've heard Ravi use many times, and it's actually an Arabic equivalent of it. There's no point in cutting off someone's nose and then giving them a rose to smell. And I think that often happens with us. We're so interested in showing how wrong they are, and then we give them the rose, and they can't smell it anymore because now we've become repugnant. We need to make sure that our attitude is that truth is worth sharing. Falsehood will expose itself if the truth comes to light.